Hi, my name is Kent Pickell. I'm president here at Search Institute, and this is part of our weekly video blog about our work trying to study and strengthen developmental relationships in kids' lives. Over the past several years, the research that we've conducted has shown quite powerfully that when kids experience those developmental relationships, their outcomes, not just in school, but in terms of their civic development, their risk behaviors, their progress toward becoming thriving and contributing adults are much, much better. And when I describe that research to people, every once in a while, and I totally understand this, kind of the cynical response is, you mean you're telling us that relationships really matter for kids and families and schools and youth programs? That's kind of a blinding flash of the obvious. And we sort of have two responses to that. One of them is that while we all know relationships are really, really critical, in many settings that really matter in kids' lives, we haven't really known how to start and how to strengthen those relationships in ways that really put all kids on that path to thriving. And so the first answer is, yeah, we know relationships matter, but we don't really know how to build them and how to make those transformative relationships real for all kids. So that's one primary objective of the work that we're doing here at Search Institute these days. But the other answer to that sort of relationships matter is a blinding flash of the obvious response to our work, I think, is that we are finding in a striking number of organizations that serve kids, relationships, despite the rhetoric, are really a pretty low priority. They are a lower priority than the curriculum in schools or the content of the program in youth programs, and certainly a lower priority in other settings that matter a lot for kids, whether it's juvenile justice or social service agencies. So our work really is about trying to help organizations that serve young people make the relationship as important as the other things that they do. And one of the things that we've done early in our work with some of those organizations is develop 6 simple questions that you can ask yourselves if you're an organization that works with kids to begin to assess the degree to which your own organization really is putting relationships first. So very quickly and abbreviatedly, here are those 6 questions your youth-serving organization can ask itself if you want to think about the degree to which you're activating that active ingredient of relationships in your work with kids. Number 1 is time. Is there dedicated time to build relationships with and among kids? Also, is there time for staff to plan those relationship building strategies? So that's number 1. If there's no time, it's not a priority. Second is, do you consider the ability to build relationships in who works or volunteers in your organization? Do you consider the capacity to build relationships when you hire? And do you actually evaluate, include building relationships as part of your evaluation, as part of your promotion strategies? Is it something that's tangible in your human resource strategy, or is it just kind of something you assume and take for granted? 3, budget. Do you actually provide resources that are dedicated to building relationships? And in some ways, maybe an easier way to put that is, when you've had to cut the budget, have you ever prioritized something that involved relationships over something that didn't involve relationships? Or in one of those rare times when your organization gets some new money, do you actually invest it in something that is focused on relationships rather than something else? Number 4 is training or professional development or capacity building. Have you ever had a workshop? Have you ever had a seminar? Have you ever just had a staff meeting where relationships were the primary subject? And that's a bit different from the fact that when you were talking about teaching math or swimming or whitewater rafting, relationships came up. But relationships as the primary focus of what you were doing in trying to improve your practice in your organization. Number 5 is data. Do you actually have any kind of data on the experience kids have and the experience that staff has of relationships in your organization? In our world at Search Institute, that data first is quantitative, and then we also supplement that with qualitative data. So it can come from surveys that you give youth or adults or both, but it also can come from focus groups and interviews. The key issue is that you're not assuming that you know how kids experience relationships in your organization. You're creating an organized way to understand that. And number 6, and in some ways it probably should be number 1, have you ever defined the kind of relationships that you seek to build with and among young people? Do you have a vision for how relationships fit in your organization? I'm on a national advisory committee with an awesome organization that works on behalf of young people all across the country, and they were created decades ago on the premise that it's not programs that change people's lives, it's relationships. But when we looked at the logic model that guides that organization's work, relationships were nowhere in there. I'm happy to say that they have subsequently added relationships and made their deep commitment to relationships quite explicit in their new work going forward. So, once again, quickly, those 6 questions your organization can ask itself to evaluate the degree to which you are putting relationships first. 1, time. 2, people. 3, budget. 4, training or professional development. 5, data. And 6, definition. Have you defined what you want to have happen in those relationships that change kids' lives? Thanks very much, as always, for tuning in, and send us your questions, your thoughts, your observations, and good luck in your own work getting relationships right.